Hi, it's Barbara Bunsey at the Calico Goose. Hope you're having a good day. If you know me, you know that I love to do stroke work, and I always tell you how I feel practicing your strokes is going to help you with all of your painting. So today I'd like to give you a little demo on those techniques. First, let's start with some circles. I am using a filbert brush. I like using a filbert when I'm doing anything round because it has the nice rounded bristles on it, and it helps me to keep my circles more round in shape. So I've got some paint out here. I'm loading my brush flat from the side of the puddle. I'm pressing down as I'm doing that. So I'm getting all the bristles full of paint, not just the ones on the outside edges. You can see I keep turning my brush to make sure that it's well loaded. Then I'm going to come over here to my circle. I always pat a little bit in the center just to get any extra paint out. And then I'm going to come right next to my pattern line, maybe a little bit inside. And you see I'm doing this with one stroke. Just going to add a tiny bit more paint in my brush. Let's come back the opposite way, which is a little harder for me to do. But there, I have my circle done in just a few strokes. Rather than sitting here pity-patting it in like I see too many painters doing. All right, we're going to let that dry. I want to show you some base coating techniques first, and then we're going to come back and talk about some other floating techniques, etc., on how, again, I feel that base coating is, or stroking is going to really help your base coating. Let's move over here to this house. And I just drew a house just because it's a basic shape for no other reason, but it's a square. It's a, I guess you'd call that a parallelogram, not really a rectangle. And this has a little triangular shape here, so I want to talk about that as well. You always want to use the largest brush you can for the area in which you're working. So this is a fairly large house. I'm using my 3/4 inch wash brush. Once again, coming over to my puddle of paint, and I'm loading from the side of the puddle, pressing down as I'm doing that. Again, this just helps to load all the bristles with paint, not just the outside ones. I'm going to come over to my surface. I'm just going to lay my brush down. Again, I kind of get a little excess out in the center, just to, again, in case there's too much paint in there. And then I'm going to come next to my pattern line, and I'm just stroking that first side in. Just kind of clean it up here. You can pick up paint as you need to. I'm going to come down here and stroke in the bottom side of my house. And again, I can clean it up. If I need to, I can stroke in my sides. And again, there it's done, my first coat, rather than trying to pity-pat it in. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I can come back, do the exact same thing for my second coat. For that little triangular area in there, I'm going to try to do this as well as I can without turning my surface for you. So please bear with me. So I'm switching to a smaller brush since this is a smaller area, but I'm trying to use a brush that's going to pretty much fit the area in which I'm painting. Once again, I'm loading from the side of the puddle, pressing down as I do that. It's always easier to pull into an acute triangle than to try to start there. So I'm going to start at the bottom of this side part of my house. I'm stroking up. Need a tad more paint in my brush. Okay, so I'm stroking it up. When I get to this area here, I'm going to press, and as I get into that corner, I'm releasing pressure. So I get into that point. Think S stroke. Here's your S stroke. Chisel edge with no pressure, lots of pressure. Release that pressure onto the chisel edge. That's what I did up here. Let's finish up this corner of the house. And again, into that corner, releasing the pressure on the chisel edge. To put a roof on this house, I'm actually going to use the same brush because it's about the same area. Maybe I can get this done in about 2 or 3 strokes. So let's put a different colored roof on there. Once again, loading it nice and flat on the side of the puddle, pressing down as I do that. I'm going to lay my brush down. Once again, pull into that tight corner. This time I'm coming the opposite direction. I'm going to lay my brush down here. Since this is a wider angle, I can get my brush in there. Pull across. And as I get to that tight angle, I'm just releasing pressure and pulling into that tight angle. It's the same thing for, let's say, a holly leaf. You have all these tight corners. Again, we're going to think S stroke. Let's come back with my green paint. And again, kind of get some of that excess out in the center before I start painting. I'm going to lay down on a flat edge, press, release pressure as I get into my corner. Come back in here and finish up that corner. Press, release pressure. Press, and release pressure. And again, you can finish up those corners by coming back the opposite way. Somehow I picked up red paint there. Again, press, release pressure as I get into the tight corner. I'm going to come down. Ignore that red paint, please. I'm just adding extra paint to my brush when I'm taking a break. And I'm working on an old surface here, so I have a few lumps and bumps. Let's go into that corner, clean it up. So you can see, just real quickly, I can get that leaf base coated. The other thing is leaves. I really do enjoy doing leaves, all different kinds of leaves. You can get those stroked in so easily. Again, you want to use a brush that's going to fit into the area in which you're working. And you're just going to do a 2-stroke leaf. I always start at the base of the leaf where it would be attached to the stem. So I'm pressing my brush down. I'm curving it just a little. And then I'm just releasing pressure, pulling into a point. Then to finish up that leaf, I'm starting back here, and I want to kind of give this a little bit of a rounded area at the base of the leaf. Again, I'm going to press, slowly release pressure, and go right into that same point. So I have that leaf totally base coated in just 2 strokes. Hopefully everything is dry for me now. I'm not going to put a second base coat on because I think you know how to do that. But let's talk about adding some floated color and how strokes can help you with that as well. Let's come over here to my circle. I'm picking up paint on a corner of my brush. I'm using something a little smaller now. Could probably go a little bigger, but. So that's on the corner of my brush. I'm going to blend it out. When I'm blending, I go back and forth on the same path, so I'm not wasting paint or water. I'm going to start my highlighting, which is what I'm doing here. You can do this for shading, whatever. I'm using a C stroke. Let's pretend this is an apple. Now my paint is pretty tacky. Let me put out some fresh paint here because I want you to see this better. I apologize for wasting your time. So once again, I'm picking up paint in the side of the brush. I'm going to come back to that same path and blend it out. Again, I don't want to waste paint or moisture. And you see I'm blending a lot. No magic number how many times you blend. Just need to see it blend through your brush. So again, let's pretend that this is an apple. And we'll pretend that this is where the stem sits. So I want to shade, pretend this is shading on both sides of this apple. So I'm starting on the chisel edge, I'm pulling through, lifting up on the chisel edge. I can move that color over a little bit. I'm going to flip my brush over and come back on this side and do the exact same thing. And you know, when you're doing your floating, you always want one side, a shadow side, to be a little bit wider. But at any rate, let's pretend that's our apple. And so what did I do to achieve that look? Again, a C stroke. So I'm starting on the chisel edge of my brush, pressing through, releasing pressure, going back up on that chisel edge. And then you can do the same technique and walk that color over as much as you need to. Same thing applies to any of the other shading that you do on any of these areas. Let's just, again, I only have one coat on the roof of that house, but let's just add a little bit of highlight on here. So I side-loaded my brush. Just going to kind of stroke it in across the top. And let's come down here on the side. You want to fill in your V area so it's not just an angle. And as I get down to the corner here, again, I just kind of release pressure. If I was doing this for good, I'd add another layer or two, and that will help soften out any of those streaks that you have going on there. Same thing holds true for the holly leaf. You're just going to add your floated color along the outside edges, always remembering pulling into the corner. I know that's the wrong color. Releasing the pressure as you get into the corner. I want to show you how I finish off my leaves. So I just did one coat on here. My second coat, I'm going to start adding some highlights. So I'm loading my brush in my base color. I'm going to pick up, I like to use 2 colors on my brush when I'm starting my highlighting and shading. So my base color and then the corners loaded in my highlight color. I'm going to blend those 2 colors together on my palette. Again, no magic number, just till you see them nicely blended. going to come on the outside edge of this leaf, press, release, press, release, press, release, press, release. That's going to give me that nice jagged edge to my leaf. And I can come through the center and add a little highlight color down through the center. And then when that's dry, and come back and do the exact same thing on this side of my leaf using my shadow color. Press, release, and again giving that jagged look. You always want to do these toward the final point of your leaf. And once again, as I would add more floats on here, it would even this out, and I would definitely add some lighter colors on here to perk it up a little bit. I want to show you one more way where you can just stroke things in. It makes it so much easier. We did this house here. So in order to add some doors and windows, let's go in with a lighter color door. Again, I'm using a flat brush, loading from the side of the puddle, pressing down. I'm going to put my door in the center of the house, so I'm just laying my brush down, stroking down. Again, not pitting-patting and stroking it down. For my windows, it's going to be basically the same thing. I'm using a little smaller brush. Oh, let's just add the windows with the same color since we're just playing here. You might want to use something darker, black or something. Again, loading it from the side of the puddle. I usually start my windows in the center of the house. It makes it easier for me to kind of line them up. So let's add 5 windows across the top. And again, I'm just stroking them in, picking up paint as necessary. You can give yourself a little guide maybe with chalk going across so you know where to start and stop. And you can add your windows down on the bottom too. Let's put 2 on this side of the house and 1 over here. Once these are totally dry, I'm not sure if they're dry enough yet or not, but I can come back, excuse me. This time I'm going to start at the bottom of the window and stroke up. You can see how that helps to kind of square the windows up a little bit. And once again, I'm just stroking, pressing, and releasing pressure as I get to the top, which is all a stroke is. Applying pressure and releasing pressure. So there you go, just a couple little tips and tricks there on how strokes, practicing your strokes, perfecting your strokes can help you with all your painting. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me at bbunsey@calicogoose.com. Until next time, have fun painting.